everyone, and welcome to Group 2's presentation. Group 2 is comprised of Imran Bahati, John Ecker, Richard Hoffman Warner, and Anna Paula Neary. Speaking on behalf of the team is John Ecker, and without further ado, let's get started. The goal of this project is to aid Comcast in choosing a location for their next call center. Throughout this course, we have studied in depth how international business is conducted in the global arena, which gives us a unique set of skills and knowledge to be able to better assist Comcast. The call center is estimated to be staffed by anywhere between 300 and 500 agents and operational 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Comcast is seeking to augment its customer service operations with the addition of this new call center, so it needs to be able to handle a high volume of calls with high levels of quality and at an affordable cost. Our methodology involved working stepwise, first vetting countries based on our qualifying metric, then applying our primary metrics, and finally our secondary metrics. The initial qualifying metric used was English proficiency because the team determined this to be the most important factor according to Comcast's requirements. After all, if the agents can't effectively communicate with customers and vice versa, they aren't going to be very useful. Once the team had begun narrowing the search using English proficiency as the main criteria, we then looked into foreign direct investment into call centers already established, secondary education levels, labor force availability, and average wages. The team identified these as the primary metrics and gave scores on these a 90% weight. The remaining 10% weight of the decision-making process was split between corruption perception, the ease of doing business in the country, economic freedom, country risk, and cultural similarity. Upon compiling the data, we noticed several countries that began to stick out, specifically 9 of them. These countries were Argentina, Puerto Rico, South Africa, Spain, Ireland, Sweden, Poland, India, and New Zealand. Based on our 5 primary metrics mentioned on the previous slide, each of these countries displayed exemplary results in one or more of the categories, causing them to stick out to our team. For instance, Puerto Rico and New Zealand are native English-speaking countries. South Africa has a high secondary education completion and labor availability, and India and South Africa both have very low average wages when compared to the U.S. wages. Once we had our top 9 countries established, it was time to perform a more in-depth comparison between them. Countries considered English proficient were those whose native language was English or who scored very high on Education First's English Proficiency Index. The team also examined whether or not these countries already had call centers established there, which tells us that the necessary infrastructure for opening a new call center is already in place. Next, our research led us to conclude that the education level required by Comcast for call center agents is the completion of high school or the equivalent level of schooling in that country. The team also looked at labor force availability with each country to verify that adequate staffing for the call center would be easily obtainable. And finally, the team looked at average annual wages and compared them to the average annual wages of workers here in the U.S. Based on our findings, South Africa scored highly on all of our primary metrics. This leads our team to conclude that South Africa, based on our data analysis, would be a great choice for Comcast's newest call center. Though the native language spoken in South Africa isn't English, according to the rankings put out by Education First, the country scores very high overall when it comes to English proficiency and was number 6 out of 88 countries sampled. We know that there is already a business infrastructure in place for opening call centers because the team identified at least a dozen of them operating in the country already. South Africa also has high labor force availability with approximately 6.2 million people seeking work, as well as a total labor force of around 22.6 million people. Furthermore, annual average wages here in the U.S. are around $50,000 per year, while average annual wages in South Africa are around $10,000 per year. This means that Comcast stands to save quite a bit of money paying South African wages instead of U.S. wages.